Hey guys, what's going on? John here, back again for another Magic the Gathering video. And in today's video, we've got a Jorn, God of Winter, Commander deck tech. This card is a new card that's been spoiled from call time, and I really enjoy the playstyle that Jorn brings around. So I decided to build a deck around it and show it to all of you in a deck tech. First up, let's get through some channel promotions. If you enjoy my content, please consider subscribing to the channel and turning notifications on. I've also got a Patreon if you'd like to spend extra money to support my channel. It would be greatly appreciated, and it helps me continue making wonderful content for the channel. I've also got a brand new Discord server, which will also be linked in the description. Patrons do have special perks on the Discord server. Without further ado, let's get into the deck. The commander of the deck is Jorn, God of Winter, which flips into Cauldron the Rime Staff. Jorn is a 3-mana 3/3 legendary snow creature god with, whenever Jorn attacks, untap each snow permanent you control. Cauldron the Rime Staff is a legendary snow artifact for 1 blue-black that says, tap, you may play target snow permanent card from your graveyard this turn. If you do, it enters the battlefield tapped. For this deck, we'll be building around snow permanents and sorceries, while also playing a lands matter sub-theme, because Cauldron and Jorn both lean into playing a lot of lands and getting a lot of mana, but especially they lean into snow permanents. Category 1 in this deck is First Snowfall. This is our ramp in the deck, and this allows us to get cooking early and be out ahead of everyone else. First up, we've got Boreal Druid. It's a snow creature that also taps to add 1 to our mana pool, which is a helpful mana dork for us in many situations. Sakura Tribe Elder sacrifices itself to get a land, and Oracle of Moldiah gives us an additional land drop on each turn and allows us to play lands from the top of the library. Next up, we've got 3 effects that get lands tapped onto the battlefield. Springbloom Druid sacrifices a land and gets 2 basics tapped. Farseek can grab us a plains, island, swamp, or mountain tapped, and it does not have to be a basic. And Into the North can grab us any snow land tapped, which is super helpful when we need a Scrying Sheets or a Snow Duel. Next up, we've got 3 cards that get us untapped lands. We've got Nature's Lore and 3 Visits, which are functionally the same card. They both get us an untapped forest. Harrow forces us to sacrifice a land and gets 2 basics onto the field untapped at instant speed. We've also got Krufix, God of Horizons, and Horizon Stone, both of which save all of our mana in the mana pool and makes it colorless. Krufix also has the added bonus of giving us no maximum hand size and being indestructible. We've also got 2 mana rocks, Soul Ring and Cold Steel Heart. Soul Ring is helpful as it can come down on turn 1 and tap for 2 mana, and Cold Steel Heart is a snow artifact that can tap for any of our colors. Finally, we've got 2 enchantments that only cost 1 mana. Burgeoning allows us to get a ton of lands whenever our opponents play lands, and Exploration allows us to play an additional land on every turn. Our second category is Let It Snow. This is snow permanents that will allow us to trigger Jorn and trigger Cauldron, bringing these permanents back from the graveyard, and they also just have generally good synergy with the deck. Avalanche Caller can make our snow lands into 4/4 elementals with hexproof and haste, which is virtually no downside if we've got Jorn on the field, as he can untap all the lands. Rime Transfusion gives Jorn the ability to become unblockable except by snow creatures, which will usually allow him to get through unharmed for his attack trigger, and Draugr Necromancer functions as Grave Hate while also stealing our opponent's creatures when they die. We've also got Icefang Coatl, which has Flash, Death Touch pretty much all the time, and draws us a card when it ETBs. Marite of the Frost is a snow creature shapeshifter that enters the battlefield as a copy of any permanent, gets an extra 1/1 counter, and it is snow, which is helpful for triggering our snow payoffs. Narfi, Betrayer King, buffs all of our snow and zombies, and we could also return it from the graveyard to the battlefield by paying 3 snow. Orin Frostfang and Orin Viper both promote dealing combat damage to a player, but Frostfang says that all creatures on our side deal combat damage to a player, we draw a card. Next up, we've got Blizzard of Fortune, which is our snow payoffs. These cards generally pay us off for having a lot of snow cards in play, and they are also just super helpful for eventually winning the game. Hydar Rhymewine Master allows us to return permanents to their owner's hand if we have enough snow permanents, and Iceberg Cancrix mills us when we play another snow permanent, which fills up our graveyard for Cauldron. Rime Tender and Sculptor of Winter are both snow creatures that untap snow lands or snow permanents. Blessing of Frost distributes 1/1 counters among our creatures, and then we get to draw for each creature we control with power 4 or greater. We only need to put 1 counter on Jorn to trigger at least 1 draw, making it a cantrip, and we'll usually have other creatures that have power 4 or greater on the field. Blizzard Brawl is a snow sorcery that gives one of our creatures indestructible if we control 3 or more snow permanents, and then also functions as a fight spell. Glacial Revelation allows us to draw a massive amount of the top cards of our library, basically putting any snow permanents from among them into our hand. And finally, we've got Merit Lage's Slumber, which is one of the best finishers in the deck. It says, whenever it or another snow permanent enters the battlefield under your control, you scry 1, and at the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 10 or more permanents, you sacrifice Merit Lage's Slumber. If you do, you make Merit Lage, which is a 20/20 with flying and indestructible. So basically, we'll be able to get Merit Lage super early onto the battlefield with all of our snow permanents, and if Merit Lage ever dies, we can get Merit Lage's Slumber back with Cauldron. Our next category is Winter Wonderland. These are our land payoffs that give us an added bonus for playing extra lands and ramping and generally having a lot of lands on the battlefield. First up, we've got 3 creatures that all draw us cards for playing lands. AEC draws us a card when a land ETBs and allows us to play an additional land on each turn. Tatiova draws us a card and gains us a life when a land ETBs. Tireless Tracker allows us to investigate whenever a land ETBs, making a clue, and whenever we sacrifice one of our clues to draw, we put a 1/1 counter on it. We've also got 3 extremely powerful land-based finishers. Obnixilis the Fallen has players lose life whenever we play lands and grows himself. The Gitrog monster allows us to draw a card whenever we put lands into the graveyard. We also have to sacrifice a land on upkeep, but it gives us the ability to play an additional land on each turn. Scapeshift allows us to sacrifice any number of unwanted lands and then tutor a bunch of lands that are super helpful, utility lands such as Scrying Sheets, Dark Depths, or any of our fetch lands, and put them onto the battlefield tapped, which is super helpful when we want to win the game out of nowhere. We've also got 3 ways to sacrifice lands. Sylvan Safekeeper protects our commander and other creatures by sacrificing lands. Constant Mists fogs the board, which also functions as protection for our commander. And Crop Rotation allows us to sacrifice a land at instant speed and tutor for any land onto the battlefield, which is an extremely good rate if we want to tutor for the best lands in our deck. We've also got 3 ways to get lands back from our graveyard to the battlefield. World Shaper mills us for 3 cards whenever it attacks, and when it dies, we get all of our lands from the graveyard back onto the battlefield. Ramyanop Excavator and Crucible Worlds both allow us to play our lands from our graveyard, which is super helpful if we're out of lands in our hand. Category 5 is the most wonderful time, and this, of course, is winning the game. So obviously this deck is a snow deck with lands, but none of that leads to winning the game inherently. So we need other ways to be able to win, to make sure that we're going to close out the game once we've established a good board presence. We've got the combo of Dark Depths and Thespian Stage. Dark Depths enters the battlefield with 10 ice counters, and when it has no ice counters, you make Merit Lage. Thespian Stage, you can pay 2 and tap it to make it a copy of a land, and it gains the ability. When Thespian Stage becomes a copy of Dark Depths, it automatically has 0 ice counters on it, and sacrifices itself immediately, making Merit Lage, which is extremely strong because you pay 2 mana for Merit Lage. We've also got 3 other finishers that are more casual. Torment of Hailfire just allows us to pay a ton of mana if we've got a lot of lands on the field, and forces opponents to lose a bunch of life, sacrifice a bunch of permanents, and discard a bunch of cards. Overwhelming Stampede gives creatures we control +X and trample until end of turn, where X is the greatest power among creatures you control, which is an instant win if we've got Merit Lage out pretty much, but it can also be extremely strong if we've just got another big creature such as AEC. Beastmaster Ascension gives us a quest counter on it whenever a creature we control attacks, and if it has 7 or more quest counters on it, creatures we control get +5/+5. Super helpful with Jorn because it triggers when he attacks, which we all automatically want to do with him, and it makes our creatures big in the endgame, allowing us to smash face and win the game very quickly. Our next category is Permafrost, and this is going to be our removal counterspells and board wipes. For removal, we've got Abrupt Decay, Assassin's Trophy, and Beast Within, all of which destroy permanents. Assassin's Trophy gives them a land, Beast Within gives them a beast, and Abrupt Decay can't be countered but can only target non-land permanents with CMC 3 or less. We've also got Drown in the Loch, which can function as a counterspell or a kill spell based on which we need at the time, and Swan Song, which is a hyper-efficient counterspell that can only target certain things and gives them a 2/2 bird, which is a pretty negligible downside. For board wipes, we've got Blood on the Snow, which allows us to choose to destroy creatures or planeswalkers, and then we can reanimate a creature or planeswalker with CMC X or less, where X is the amount of snow spent to cast it, which will usually be all 6 of the mana. Dead of Winter gives all non-snow creatures -X/-X, where X is the number of snow permanents we control, which will usually be a one-sided Wrath, except for maybe 1 or 2 creatures on our side of the field. And Cyclonic Rift is the classic board wipe that allows us to overload and return all of our opponent's non-land permanents back to their hands, which will usually win us the game. Category 7 is just our Tutors, Protection, and Other. For Protection, we've got Lightning Greaves, Swiftfoot Boots, Whisper Silk Cloak, all of which either give Shroud or Hexproof. Lightning Greaves also gives haste, as does Swiftfoot Boots, and Whisper Silk Cloak gives unblockable. We've also got Heroic Intervention, which gives our permanents hexproof and indestructible until end of turn, which is super helpful against board wipes. And Rhystic Study allows us to draw a card whenever opponents cast spells, unless they pay 1, which a lot of the time they'll have trouble doing, or it will restrict their ability to make plays. For tutors, we've got Demonic Tutor and Vampiric Tutor, both of which are unconditional tutors. Demonic Tutor puts it straight to the hand, Vampiric Tutor puts it to the top of our library and loses us a couple life. Mythos of Brokos returns 2 permanents from our graveyard to our hand, but if blue-black was spent to cast it, we can tutor a card to the graveyard, which means we get to reanimate one thing to our hand and tutor something straight to our hand. Category 8 is Frozen Earth. This is our final category, and it's going to be the lands in the deck. We've got Breeding Pool, Overgrown Tomb, and Watery Grave, which are all shock lands, super helpful, super efficient, and pretty much go in every deck I build. We've got Drowned Catacomb, Hinterland Harbor, and Woodland Cemetery, which, similar to the shock lands, they are check lands, and they go in pretty much every deck I build because they're extremely strong, and usually will be entering untapped. We've also got Misty Rainforest, Polluted Delta, and Verdant Catacombs as our on-color fetches. These are super helpful to put lands in our graveyard to reanimate with certain things like Crucible of Worlds and Ramyanop Excavator, and can also tutor out some of our snow duels. We've finally got Prismatic Vista as our last fetch land, which can only grab basics, but will also be grabbing a snow land all the time. And then we've got Nurturing Peatland and Watery Grove, which are pain lands that allow us to sacrifice themselves to draw a card. We've also got 2 lands that will usually tap for all of our colors, being Command Tower and Exotic Orchard, and we've also got a new land from Kaldheim, Littjara Mirror Lake, which enters the battlefield tapped, and we can pay 5 and sacrifice it to make a token that's a copy of a creature we control that ETBs with an additional 1/1 counter, which is extremely, extremely strong in the land slot. We've also got 3 tap lands, Ice Tunnel, Rimewood Falls, and Woodland Chasm. All have 2 basic land types and enter the battlefield tapped and are snow. This means they're tutorable by things like Nature's Lore, Farseek, and 3 Visits. And they also are snow lands, triggering our snow payoffs such as Merit Lage's Slumber, and can be reanimated by Cauldron. Finally, we've got 2 more snowlands in Mouth of Ronom and Scrying Sheets. Mouth of Ronom allows us to sacrifice it to deal damage to creatures, and since it's a snowland, we can do this repeatedly if we've got Cauldron or a Crucible of Worlds effect on the field. We've also got Scrying Sheets, which taps for a colorless, but also allows us to look at the top card of our library, and if it's snow, we can put it into our hand after revealing it. This is extremely helpful because it's card advantage in the land slot, and since we've got so many snow permanents and snow sorceries, this is usually going to hit us a card. Finally, we've got our basics, 9 snow-covered forests, 2 snow-covered islands, and 3 snow-covered swamps. We just want to have a lot of snowlands, which is why we've got so many basics in these decks, because, at least in Jorn's case, there's not a ton of snowlands that are super efficient, except for the 5 we've got in the deck, so the best way to get a lot of snowlands is just by playing snow basics. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to drop a like and subscribe, and while you're at it, turn on the notification bell to be notified every time I upload. Also, check me out on Patreon. Your support there is greatly appreciated and allows me to continue making content. Thank you for watching, and I will see you later.